Hey YouTubers, today is going to be a little bit of a long day for me. I have my 2010 not Volkswagen, I'm working on the Audi. So I'm working on my Audi Q5 with the 3.2, and what happened is the other day I started it up, I'm driving down the street, and then it develops a misfire, and then the EPC light comes on. It says it's got a persistent cylinder 3 misfire. Checked my coil was good. Checked my spark plug was soaking wet with gas, so it wasn't firing. And so I figured, well, maybe it's the coil, and so I moved the coil over to a different cylinder and swapped it out, and the problem stayed on cylinder number 3, still getting completely soaked. And then I pulled the coil and the spark plug out and started the car up, and then when I shut it off, I could hear a hissing sound, and I could look into the cylinder, and I can actually see with the car off and the key out, I could see the residual pressure from the high pressure fuel rail spraying into the cylinder. So the diagnosis that I've come up with is that my fuel injector on cylinder number 3 is stuck in the open position. So what I did was, let me show you guys real quick. I went and I bought an injector. Now I didn't buy just one injector, I bought 2 injectors. And the reason why is because occasionally I get a cylinder number 6 misfire. It's not all the time, sometimes it'll be 3-4 days, sometimes it'll be a week, but sometimes I get a cylinder number 6 misfire. So what I'm going to attempt to do today is pull the intake and change the injector, and then I'm going to check the others to see if they have any kind of leak down problems, and if there's any others with leak down problems, hopefully it's not more than one other, because I only bought 2 injectors. But we're gonna get into it. As usual, if you like the videos I make, click like so I know I can make more of the same, and then if you want to see more of the same when I make them, click subscribe. So let's get into it. Here's the car, and it's early in the morning, and let me see, it is January 5th, and it's 8:45 in the morning. Needless to say, it's kind of cool outside. It's not freezing, I live in Florida, but still on the cool side. This front cover just goes over here. I just pulled this off. But from what I saw online, my initial thought was that there would be something, some kind of bracket on the bottom side of the throttle body. I've seen on a lot of cars, the throttle body usually has a bracket that's attached from here down to the engine somewhere. From what I see online, that is not the case with this. I just need to undo a couple of vacuum lines, undo this whole conglomerate of vacuum lines and solenoids, and move this out of the way. And then in front here I got a couple wires and then I got this vacuum line that goes to this vacuum pump right here that just needs to pull out, and then it's a bunch of T30 Torx, and then I got to remove this intake tube, and then the upper intake should come out. Now once I get the upper intake out, then I will see if I have to remove the lower intake, which the lower intake are 2 individual pieces. There's one over here on this bank, one over here on this bank. We'll see if I have to remove that also to get to the fuel rail and the injectors, or if I'm lucky and I can just remove the injectors with the lower fuel intake plenums still intact. The reason why I would like that is because I don't want to pull it off and risk ruining the intake gasket, because I didn't buy intake gaskets. I'm an idiot like that. So I'm gonna get into it. I'm gonna remove this upper intake. I'm not gonna show you guys the process. I mean, it's pretty straightforward as far as I can see, but if I run into any hiccups, I will definitely record that, and so I'll let you guys know. So I'll be back with you in a minute. So I got good news and I got bad news. The good news is the upper intake is out. Super easy to remove. It takes less than a half hour. I mean, like, I started at 8:45, and let me go get my watch. I'll tell you what time it is now. It is 9:10. So less than a half hour. And it was just a matter of removing all the vacuum hoses and lines off of here. There's some connectors that go onto the intake. The one for the throttle body was about the hardest one to remove, and that wasn't even a task. I didn't even need a pick. I just put my thumb on here and pulled this clip back and slid it right off. Real easy. So the upper intake, super easy to remove. It came out without a hitch. Everything came out really nice. The bad news is that I'm going to have to remove these fuel rails. So this is a fuel rail with all these 10mm bolts. So there's 10mm bolt, T30, 10mm bolt, and then T30, and then up here there's a T30, T30, T30. I don't know if you can see, T30. So the fuel rails are gonna have to come out to get to the fuel injectors, and then down here, so this is one of the fuel injectors. This is where it connects to the electrical connector, and then another one here, and then another one over here underneath here. So I'm going to have to disconnect the fuel rail from the high pressure pump over here, down in here. I'm probably going to take this piece of intake off with the air cleaner box. So I'm going to disconnect that from there, and then undo these T30 clamps that are holding the hose all along here, and then undo this hose, this line, this hard line that goes to this fuel rail, and this line that goes to this fuel rail, and then try to remove that entire piece and get it out of the way. I mean, I could probably just disconnect it here and here, but I like having room to work with. I don't like squeezing my hand into places and risking breaking stuff, you know, trying to be lazy or anything like that. Also, I'm seeing that there's some crud here. I'm gonna clean that up. There is a little bit of seepage here. This is all coolant. So this is the thermostat housing right here under this. I'm probably gonna just change out the thermostat while I'm down here. I'm gonna change this out, put a new gasket on here to mitigate this leak that's starting here, since I'm already down in here. And that's pretty much it. This piece here, this is where your PCB goes. So the PCB, this is PCB hose that goes from the front here and goes to the back and meets up with other PCB hoses, and then this is your PCB line. It goes to this bank, it goes on this valve cover and comes around and goes into this piece, and then same thing on the other side. This one goes from this valve cover and goes into this piece. So if you need to replace these, your PCB hose and whatever else is going on, and you have to remove the upper intake, super easy, not a big deal. Also, down in there, man, those valves are as cruddy as crud could be. I'm probably going to spray it out with a bunch of brake cleaner and cycle the engine with no spark plug to try to get that to go through the engine. That's not the best course of action, because when you do that, you stand a risk of quite possibly sending that into your catalytic converter, and that could be a problem. Let's see, I don't know if you can see that, but yeah, that's not good. That's not how it's supposed to be. It's not designed to be like that. And then the same thing here, and then the same thing here, across the board. It's just it's really bad down in there, so I'm gonna try to clean that up a little bit before I put Humpty Dumpty back together. But the easiest way to get to those would be to remove the lower intakes. So I'm gonna pull the fuel rail, see what's going on with the injectors. If it's not too much of a task and I still have daylight left, I'm going to pull these lower intakes and try to clean up the backside of those valves a little bit. Just spray it out with some brake cleaner real good so it's not as nasty when I put it back together. So let me work on getting this fuel rail out, and I'll show you guys what happens next. I got the fuel rail loosened up. It's just a matter of pulling it out. A couple things I wanted to show you guys. So first of all, I pulled the air box out of here. There are no screws holding it in place. It's kind of pushed into this part here, and then there are two grommets here that it goes into place, and then one back here that holds it in place also. The only thing is, there's this hose. This hose goes into the bottom of the air box, and this is for your secondary air injection pump, which is located down there. So I'll show you on the air box. So on the bottom side of the air box, so these are the two grommets that go into the chassis. This is where that hose goes in, so you're gonna have to try to see if you can squeeze in there with your hand and put it in from the top down, or if not, you're gonna have to remove the protective cover on the bottom of the engine and just reach in underneath from in front of this wheel and just reach in there up top and install it that way. So that's the only thing you have to be mindful of, taking the air box out. But I'm going to show you guys a couple things. First of all, so I got this disconnected. The whole thing is disconnected. I can these are loose. These connections are loose. I can just take them out. When you're reinstalling these, I haven't gotten to that stage yet obviously, but when you're reinstalling fuel rails, my experience has been you install your fittings, all your fittings, you install those before you install the clamps, because sometimes the rail might get slightly bent or it might be under tension because of these clamps, and so you clamp it down and then you have a hard time lining up the rail, and then you might end up cross-threading these fittings when you're trying to install them. So when you're reinstalling, put your fittings on first, and then when that's on and you have them threaded, they don't have to be tight, but you have to make sure they're threaded in nice and good so that you're not going to cross thread anything, and then you can put in all your hose, your rail clamp screws or bolts or whatever. Another thing, there are two types of clamp bolts on this. I'm going to show you guys. So there's this with this coarse thread, looks like a wood screw, and then there's this, which is a machine thread. And so depending on where they are, like this is a machine, this is a coarse, this is a machine, this is a machine, this is a machine, you know, but you don't want to be doing this in the dark and try to fit a coarse thread into a machine hole or vice versa. So you just got to be mindful that there are two different threads when you take them out, and make sure you put the right one in the right space when you're putting it all back together. So that's just all I wanted to show you on this. I'm gonna get back to taking this apart. Now I got, so how this is assembled over here, there are T30s all along the top, and then there's one T30 in the middle on the bottom, and then there are 10 millimeters, which I already showed you guys all of that stuff, and that's fine. And this piece, this is just an aluminum girdle that holds the fuel rail down against the lower intake. This whole intake is gonna have to come out. Now when you get all the T30s out, there's one little guy here. I think he's a, let me see, I think it's a T15. It's a little one. Yeah, so that's a T15, and that's gonna have to be addressed, or else the whole thing won't come out. You'll pull on either side, it'll wiggle, but it won't come out. So you have to be mindful to take this little bugger out, and then once you get that out, this girdle, you can wiggle it and then it'll come out. There's a little bit of resistance, but there's nothing else once you remove those T30s and those 10 millimeters. So how it works, the T30s go all the way in. So here's the other side, they go down in there. And then the 10 millimeters are studs, and those are guides so that you fit it in right and hold it in place. Now, once you remove the girdle, I'll show you real quick if I can figure out what I did with it. Oh, so once you remove the girdle, which is this piece, and it has the T30s and then the 10 millimeters and all that stuff, and it's sitting on top of the fuel rail, then you have to pull the fuel rail out. This is the fuel rail, and there's nothing else holding the fuel rail. It's just resistance, and I got this out with my hands. I just put my fingers under there and wiggle it from side to side. It came loose and popped right out. Once you do that, there's nothing else holding this lower intake in place. This, other than the fact that it's been on there since the car was manufactured, there's really nothing. You just wiggle it and see how it's wiggling now. And yeah, it's making that sound like it wants to come out. And then once it starts coming out, you just got to remember that there are these guides, these studs, where the 10 millimeters were. And so you need to pull it out in line with that. And ta-da! Your lower intake is out. So I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. But once we have that out, it's just a matter of removing the injectors now. So now I'm going to see how much of a task it is to get these injectors out, and if I'm gonna need a special tool and just abandon this project. We'll see. Alright, here's the injector, the one that is bad, and I'll show you guys in a minute how it's bad. It's stuck in the open position, but here are the retainers. So this retainer goes in face down inside of the intake manifold. So here's where the injector came out of, and this goes down inside of there. Yeah, so it goes all the way in there, and it's seated all the way down to where just this little tab, that little tab that you see right there, that's the only part that's exposed. And that, when the injector is down inside of there, this tab, when the injector is down inside of there, this tab goes around the outside of the injector, and it goes over this tab so that these two ears are on the outside of this clip. So they go on the outside, and it's really hard to show you, but there are these little ears, and they clip onto these little ears right here. So when I put this tab back in, I have to be mindful to bend that piece. Here, I'll show you. Let me see if I can't lay it down and show you if it doesn't want to lay down. But yeah, I have to be mindful to bend this little tab right here and this one on the other side sticking out, so that when I push this one down, it's going to clip in there and hold it in place. And that's the whole assembly to it. So now let me come over here and I'll show you guys why this injector is bad. Okay, so this injector, it's supposed to be in the closed position by default. So unless there's an electrical pulse going on this connector right here, this should be completely sealed up. Nothing should ever flow through. So I'm going to put compressed air on the end of this, and you'll see what's going on. Pay close attention because it's going to happen fast. See how it just sprayed out the end there like it's wide open? That's the problem. It's stuck in the open position. It shouldn't be stuck, like I shouldn't be able to spray anything through there in either direction. It should be completely sealed off. It's stuck in the open, and it's probably just a piece of dirt got in there. I mean, I can see down inside that hole, but it's probably just a piece of dirt got in there, or crud or something like that, and just got in the way of that solenoid seating and closing the injector back completely. And so that's why it's just pouring fuel down inside the engine. So I'm gonna try to clean that, and I'm gonna show you guys that process. If it works, great. If it doesn't work, well, I have an injector. I'm going to put it back together with the new injector. Here's my setup. I got my battery from my cordless drill. Let's ignore that. That has nothing to do with this. And there are wires going here to the injector. Positive to positive, negative to negative. The reason I know this is positive is because there's a plus sign over there. So we know that's the positive side. And then I have it hooked up to a momentary switch. So if you come over here and listen, that's when I press the momentary switch, the solenoid clicks. The reason why I do it like that, it's a lot easier than trying to flick this wire on here and, you know, try to make it work. And you can't just add power to it, because that winding in there will burn out in a few seconds if you just hook constant power to it. So the objective is, I'm going to take this hose, put it on the nozzle of the injector, fill it with an injector cleaner, apply pressure from my compressor, and then click that and see if maybe whatever is inside of this injector clogging it up will go out the back way, because it definitely can't go out the front way. If it didn't go out the front with 2000 psi of direct injection pressure, it's not going out the front. So I'll try to get it out the back side, see if it works. We're hoping for the best. Well, I think my backflow cleaning method worked. So now what I have is this hose is full of cleaner, this stuff, and then I have a hose clamp here, a hose clamp here, and then I have it hooked up to the battery so that I can open and close the solenoid. And so I'm going to show you guys, when I apply pressure, nothing comes out, but then when I hit this button, then it starts spraying. So pressure, and you can hear it, but nothing is coming out. But then pressure, and then I open the solenoid. So yeah, there is zero leak down. I'm happy with those results. So now I'm going to reinstall the original fuel injector instead of the aftermarket, which I'm happy about, because even though it is a new fuel injector, it's kind of a cheap one, and also I get to return it and get my money back. All right, so I'm at the halfway mark. I'm almost done with this. So I started putting this rail back in. Real quick thing, you see how this stud and this dowel is flush with this bracket that holds the rail down and in place. If you put this in and it's not fully seated and it's sticking up like that, it should just fall down into place like that. Same thing on the other side. It should just fall into place. If it's not falling into place, if it's not sitting flush, you may have done something wrong. Your injector may not be properly seated. You may have a gasket that's messed up or something, but it should sit perfectly flush, or else you need to go back and check your work and do it now, not after you've tried to start the car. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this rail because I get occasionally a number 6 misfire. That's this one down here, and it may not be anything, you know, it might be a coil, it might be a plug, it might be the injector, but I'm already in here. May as well pull that injector, make sure I don't have a leak down problem, and once I'm done with that, then I'm going to take this thermostat housing off, because it's got a bunch of leaks around it. It's seeping, and it's not a huge problem. Like, most of the stuff that's on there is dried up and turned to crud, so you know, it's not leaking a lot to where I should really be concerned. But again, I'm already in here, may as well take care of it right now. And once I'm done with that, I'm gonna put it back together and hope my car starts. I didn't see anything on this number 6 injector. I didn't record that. Nothing special going on there. I think it's fine. I put the rail back together on this side and tighten everything down. Don't forget this little bad boy right here that I originally thought was a T15. It's a T20. So yeah, make sure you put that little screw back on both sides. It doesn't do anything, but you know, I just like putting it back. So I installed all my hard lines. There's the one from the high pressure fuel pump, and it goes down here and it splits into a Y and goes to one bank and the other. And so now, before I put the upper intake back on, I'm going to crank the car a little bit and pressurize the system. Make sure that I don't have any leaks or gas pouring out of anywhere, because I'd rather do it now than later. Connected, the system pressurized. There's no leaks. I don't smell any gas anywhere. All the stuff you see here, that's just brake cleaner stuff that I sprayed on here to kind of get the big stuff off. This thermostat housing, I was going to take it off, but then I realized this really short hose, there's no way to get it off with this hose. The only way to get it off is to unbolt the housing that goes into this head and then the one that goes into that head to get this off. And I'm not doing all that today. I'm picking my battles, so I'm just going to put it back together like that and hope it runs. Okay guys, it's been actually a month since I made that video of me taking out my injector and cleaning it and reinstalling it. Needless to say, the car ran fine. It's been running fine ever since. I've had zero problems. The EPC light went off right away. I didn't even have to clear anything or clear any codes. I just started the car up and went around the block. However, the part that I didn't show you guys, and I should have recorded, is that when I first started the car up after I did the repair, there was bellows and bellows of smoke coming out of the tailpipe, because the oil had gotten gas saturated. It got contaminated with fuel because of that fuel injector just pouring gas down into the cylinder, and then it leaked down, of course, into the crankcase. I drained all of the oil. There was probably a half a gallon of gas in there because there was way more in there than there should be, and so I drained all of that out, put a new filter, put all new oil, and then started the car up. The smoke went away after a couple of minutes. I'm sure there was extra fuel in the exhaust system from it being that rich, and also from the oil being contaminated. But once I did that, couple miles, problems went away, everything worked fine, the car ran great, no misfires or anything like that. So that project complete was a success. I've been driving the car around for over a month since then and haven't had any issues. But yeah, that was just a long video, but it's a lot of work showing you guys about changing the injectors on the Audi Q5 with the 3.2 liter V6. It's not super hard to do, but it is a lot of work, and you have to make sure that you start early in the day on a nice day, and you're not rushing to try to get it out the door, because it's one of those things where you'll make mistakes. Don't rush it. You're gonna make mistakes, I guarantee you. But if you take your time and you're meticulous, it'll go fine. It's not too complicated. It's not as complicated as people might make it seem, working on Audi engines, and all that stuff. It's an engine just like any other engine. All right, so that's it for you guys. Have a good day. Bye.